So when we have Manize and we have Chinese steel technology, we are having the best possible steel products being made in Zimbabwe by Zimbabweans for the global market. You combine the steel, you combine the new energy electric vehicles, which I alluded to earlier on, you see the possibilities. And this is what our president was looking at when he visited China. We start by saluting the fact that you could come to our headquarters, the headquarters of the permanent Zimbabwe Revolution, to hear the progress which is being made by our leader, Comrade President Dr. Emmerson Mnangagwa, in the handling of national affairs, in the handling of, first in the handling of party affairs, secondly in the handling of national affairs, and the geopolitical impact which he is beginning, which is beginning to gather pace as his policy of engagement and re-engagement crescents, and also as his mantra, enemy to none, friend to all, begins to take root in the interaction of Zimbabwe at both bilateral and the multilateral level. Clearly an emerging statesman of stature on the global stage. So we are happy that you are here today in your numbers, and we never take it lightly that you could be elsewhere. You probably would be invited by our opposition, but we have not seen them ever doing something similar to what we do here. It looks like they are running out of steam, which is as it should be. So when you come here, we don't take it lightly. We also believe that as patriots, you take our message seriously. That's why you pay more attention to us. The People's Party Conference of Zanu PF will be held next month. The party leadership under the Secretary General, under the Chairman, National Chairperson of the party, Comrade Opa Mchinguri Kashiri, as well as the Secretary General, Comrade Obet Mpofu, they have been very busy working on this party conference. One thing you can be sure of is that Zanu PF is a part of organization. Organization is in our DNA. We owe it to history. It's a product of our historical march since the 1960s, when the National Liberation Movement was born in Zimbabwe. So because of that appetite for organization, we promise you a very, very successful National People's Conference. And there's already a lot of excitement by our membership. I think you can see the debate which is going on within the party. People vociferously expressing their views on different aspects of the party. And in this instance, we are a democratic party. We always remind people that when a nation purposely sacrifices lives so that it could become Zimbabwe again, these are people who made conscious decisions. And conscious decisions belie that they are being made in a democratic manner. So the ethos of democracy is ingrained in our history of the struggle. We made democratic decisions to sacrifice and paid a heavy price for that. So in this vein, we very much, as the party, welcome the robust debate which is going on across a variety of issues. And we promise a very lively conference, but at the same time, a conference which will see the party being accounted for by its membership as to how it is delivering the Zimbabwe which the Zimbabweans want. This is what will be at that conference. We are determined to restore prosperity and glory to the people of Zimbabwe. This is the focus of that conference, And the mantra, the motto, everything will revolve around that aspect of growing the economy, delivering prosperity, and restoring the glory of this country. I never cease to remind that in sub-Saharan Africa, the testament to what Zimbabwe has been in the past, you just need to go to Mutsvangwa, you just need to go to Danamombe, you just need to go to Kami in Bulawayo, and 200 other great Zimbabwe, starting with Mapungubwe in South Africa, which is part of our civilization. So we go back a long way. So when we aspire to glory, it's only answering to what we have been in history, and I will be making allusions to that as we go on. So this is the People's Conference. Right now we are much more focused on the organization of it, but I've also mentioned on the robust debate which is going on within the party about the performance of the party and about the future direction of the party, with people aspiring, expressing what they would wish the party to be. What we can assure you, of course, of the democratic ethos, we never muzzle debate in Zanu PF. We don't muzzle debate. We allow the full flower of the people's views. But at the end of the day, the party will then take a considered view, and the president and his Politburo will chart a way forward which always ensures continuity to the party of prosperity which he has charted since 2017 with the Second Republic and Operation Restore Legacy. So this is the footpath which we are following come the People's Party Conference. But the organization is impeccable. You saw it on SADC. We delivered a clockwork orange summit. Everything worked as Zanu PF should be. I remind you, we are a party of organization. You don't win a war, a modern war, against the foremost imperial power, the cat's paw of the British, the Rhodesian army, unless you get organized. So, organization is at play. That's the People's Conference. We also want to highlight the progress which our president is making on the regional stage also and on the global stage. Last time we congratulated the president on a very successful SADC summit and his chairmanship. He has been winning kudos from his colleagues. We see a lot of work going on in our various embassies as our ambassadors take on the role of being the regional chairmanship of SADC in the various countries in which they are. We are an organization of neighbors. We are an organization of friends. We are an organization, a Pan-African organization. But beyond that, I emphasize we are an organization, the only regional organization in the world with a shared political soul, which comes from our common struggle as we trained to build a modern army during the national liberation stage of the armed struggle. That's where we come from. So, as Zanu PF, we are at home with all our fellow national liberation movements. When they are in challenges, we are there with them. And when they are in elections, we are there with them. And when there is need to celebrate, we are also there with them. And you saw it a couple of months ago. Madagascar became independent, and our president made it a point to go to Antananarivo to attend the inauguration of President Ravdolina from Madagascar. And you saw Madagascar play a very, very prominent role during our deliberations of the summit in Zimbabwe. This is the bonds which we want in the sub-region. And even when the president was in China, SADC heads of states made it a point to come and pay respects to him and discuss issues of regional importance with him, which is, of course, due diplomacy in light of the fact that Zimbabwe is now the chairman. So we are determined to discharge that role on behalf of SADC and take it to another level in terms of the same pursuit which I mentioned earlier on, delivering prosperity to our region. There is no region which is better poised to take advantage of the paradigm shift in global mobility from fossil fuels to new energy, electric batteries as well as hydrogen fuel. In both categories, hydrogen fuel cells and new energy electric batteries, SADC is singularly well positioned by geological fate. When it comes to new energy electric batteries, lithium, you know about the story of Zimbabwe. Cobalt, you know the story of DRC Congo. It supplies 70% of the world cobalt. Yes. Yeah. Cobalt, you know DRC, the role which it plays. All the trucks which you see coming through Zimbabwe are carrying cobalt for exports to the battery producing regions of the Far East. For these batteries to work, they need to conduct electricity. And the best conductor of electricity, for those who went to physics, through physics, is copper. And both Zambia and the DRC, our neighbors, they are now supplying 40% of the world copper. These are our neighbors. We have also the requirement for graphite. This battery, which is also the same battery which powers the new electric vehicles, but on a larger scale. It requires graphite as a mineral. Zimbabwe has got graphite in Karoi, all you know about Lynx mine. But more exciting is the fact that Mozambique is the largest graphite mine in the world, in the Cabo Delgado region. Then it comes to manganese. South Africa is big in manganese. This is another mineral in the electric battery chain. Then it comes to nickel. Madagascar has got huge resources. So the whole ecosystem of new energy electric batteries has something to do with SADC countries. So we do now fully appreciate our role in the paradigm shift to new energy, green energy, mobility. When it comes to hydrogen, again, the most important catalyzer is platinum. And you know that Zimbabwe and South Africa hold the rooster in terms of global platinum resources. We are number 1 and number 3 in the world, platinum group metals. So whichever way the future of new energy mobility moves, you have to call the SADC address. This resonates with our president's new role, which is industrialization, because we are on the cusp of a major industrialization drive as the global technology centers vie for the attention of SADC. It's happening now that for the first time in America's engagement with Africa, America is building a railway line for an African country. It has never happened. There's a railway line going on now being sponsored by America between Angola, DRC and Zambia. This is something which America never thought of in the past. So we say to America, welcome on board. You are coming to the right region. This is SADC, and in the same vein, I want to say the new American ambassador seems to be hitting the right buttons. Our president authorized our acting president to make sure that he meets with the new American ambassador because of his schedule was in China, so that we can take the relations between Washington and Zimbabwe to another level. And just yesterday, the same ambassador, Ambassador Pamela Tremont was meeting our Minister of Women Affairs, SMEs, and community development. This is a good thing. Our president has always said we are an enemy to none and a friend to all. And we are there to engage with our historical partners, but also to re-engage with those who may not have seen eye to eye with us over certain periods. It's normal, it's inevitable in the course of history that we have disagreements along the way, but eventually people have to find each other out. So we see the signs coming from the American ambassador of engaging with Zimbabwean political leadership and government leadership as a good thing. By the way, I had the pleasure of receiving the charge d'affaires at Zanu PF headquarters last year. This is a good thing. We are very happy. We never made America be what it is. They hold an inordinate sway in every aspect of human socio-economic endeavor. And there's just so much which Zimbabwe can gain by just being on the right side with America. And our president has given instructions to that effect. Yes, President Beki the other day, he made reference to the role of the third force during the riots against foreigners in South Africa, the xenophobic riots. We are very happy that the liberation movement, of which I made an allusion to earlier, is bring out the truth that all these things, they never look as simple as the opposition at home would like us to believe. There was a third force. And the third force hankers to the past when the West was the dominant player on the African continent. We don't need to constantly remind of slavery, colonialism, partition of Africa, and the neo-colonial project in Africa. So when he speaks of a third force, these are the elements at play. But look, it's good that the history is coming out. It is also a call upon our local opposition to say, rinemanyanga hariputirwi. Zvinozongobuda chete zvamaita. More so when the people behind the third force shift their geopolitical and diplomatic positions. The truth is coming out because there is no more interest probably in the West, in Washington, in London, in Paris, in Brussels, and in Berlin. There's no more interest to continue to pursue the same path. There may be no more interest. So when paradigms shift, the waters expose what had been happening in the past. When the riverbed shifts, you see what has been going on in the past more clearly. But it vindicates what we Zanu PF have always said. But that is it may, we are much more focused on the present. We have no reason to dwell to the gripes of the past about what was done to us. It arrests our progress. As you know, our president never looks into the rear view mirror, our president. He looks always in the windshield as to where we are going. That's why in all the First Republic changes which has gone on, there has never been an effort at trying to settle scores by our president. He says there are 24 hours in a day, and all those 24 hours I devote them to the progress of Zimbabwe. If I start looking at setting scores, then I take some time off the 24 hours and I look through the rear view mirror, and then it distracts my attention away from the task at hand. So we are not going to be dwelling on who said what among the big powers during that period of time. We are more focused on the fact that they want to embrace Zimbabwe, and these are powerhouses, these countries. They are investment partners, they are technology partners, they are also markets which we need for our people as they carve out a new role as a major production center on the African continent in a variety of ways. So when you begin to be productive, you focus on things which make sure that you have access to the market. And trying to revive old grudges is not a way we develop markets. And I want to assure you, I sometimes can be quite generous in my wording on many issues, but the president, from the day he gave me this job, he says we are there to make friends regardless of what may have happened in the past with the big powers. We have no reason to perpetuate gratuitous quarrels with big centers of power on the global stage. We are only 16 million Zimbabweans. We are in the center of Africa. We are land-linked because we are landlocked. So we are land-linked. We thrive on the basis of relations with our neighbors. We also thrive on the basis of relations with everybody on the global stage, regardless. So we will not be enamored to our past. We are definitely focused on the future, and the president's diplomacy on the global stage to date attest to that. So welcome on board Europe, welcome on board America, welcome on board South Korea. The president was recently in South Korea for a South Korea-Africa summit. It is the VAG, it is the VOG, it is the VAG also, where everybody wants to be associated with Africa. Every major institutional, every major economic power wants to be engaged with Africa. The Chinese started it in 2000 when nobody thought it fashionable. At that time when African leaders went to Western capitals, you would be lucky to see a junior official in foreign ministry. But now African leaders are being hosted in summits in every capital of consequence on the global stage. This is a good thing for Africa, to be in the limelight. So the president was invited to South Korea. Japan had its TRICAD summit just a few weeks ago. Our foreign minister was there. Indonesia just had its own Africa summit. Our vice president and the minister of women's affairs were dispatched by the president to attend to that summit. So this is a good thing for Africa, that there just is so much attention to it. And China, of course, made it a point of also hosting the much more glorious African summit recently in Beijing. Look, they've been doing it now since 2010. Since 2000. It's 24 years of China-Africa diplomacy. So it's within their stride. They know it. They've done it more than anybody else. So they really put on a good show in Beijing. And the beauty about the attendance was that some of the countries which the West have always tried to be their closest friends in Africa, they were all at the high table in Beijing. So Africa is coming of age. I will remind you what was asked to President Ruto when he was in Washington. He was asked, where are you between China and America, between Beijing and Washington? He says, I'm looking straight. I'm not looking sideways. I'm not looking east. I'm not looking west. I'm looking forward. Because forward is where the best opportunities lie. That was a very profound statement, and it is very much reflected in what went on in Beijing. The Chinese have made a big technological breakthrough, a big manufacturing breakthrough in many fields of human economic activity. Very pamberi. I think if you look at who is the top trading partner of number 1 to number 50 countries in the world, all of them put China as number 1 as a trading partner. So you can understand the manufacturing prowess which satisfies this appetite by the global stage of Chinese manufactured goods on behalf of every company of every capability in the whole world. The Fortune 500 companies are all in China. So they are making strides, and the beauty about it is that this is something which is happening before our eyes. When you look at the progress which America made, it's historical. When you make with the progress which Europe made for Africa, it's historical. You always are tempted to think that's how things were. But when you look at the progress which China is making now, oh, it's happening before our eyes. It gives us added impetus, added urgency, added motivation to say if the Chinese can make it, we also can make it. So it was very interesting. As a revolutionary party, Zanu PF, the president took us through the steps of history to be where we are today. And it is very befitting that maybe as the part of the permanent revolution of Zimbabwe, we take our caps off to a Zimbabwean national chairman of ZANU at that particular time, Herbert Chitepo. He was invited by the late president of Nyerere, because he didn't have lawyers in Tanzania when Tanganyika became independent, to become his director of public prosecutions. At the same time, he was deployed by the party to work for ZANU in Dar es Salaam. He is the one who forged that relationship with China and the China Communist Party through the good offices of President Nyerere. When China was still a very poor country, hardly a decade out of its own independence and struggle against the imperialism, it was poor. But he saw the future in this country. It is a future which continues to pay huge dividends. When we wanted to learn the art and science of war, China was by our side. We had another diaspora, by the way, of young people in the 1960s and 70s. And our president, by going to Nanjing, by going to Hunan, where Mao Tse-tung was born, he was taking young Zimbabweans through the paces of where we are today. But it was just not for nostalgia. He also made it a point of visiting the new technological giants which have come out of China, which are making a mark on the global stage. Everybody knows the travails of Huawei vis-à-vis America, but it has braved through to become again a technological power of innovation in telecommunications, in the internet, and now in the new energy electric vehicle mobility. In every aspect, you will see the name Huawei of this new era of artificial intelligence. Even the manufacture of chips, which are in their phones, this was a bone of contention before they used to get them from America. Now they make them themselves. This is a technological leap. So the trip of the president was beyond nostalgia. It was an aspiration to modernity. He went to BYD. BYD is the company which is the new Ford of, what Ford was in the fossil fuels, starting Tesla is. But when it came to production, General Motors became the giant. So Tesla is the pioneer of new energy electric vehicles. They are in China. But a local Chinese company from Shenzhen, BYD, Build Your Dreams. He has become the leader in new energy electric vehicles. By the way, when you are going to the airport one of these days, if you see a showroom on your left side, that's a BYD showroom. This company is a marvel of modern electric car manufacture. It is taking the world by storm. And the president was there. Why? For a little bit of history. We were at the forefront of the fossil fuel manufacturing promise in Africa in the 1960s when the Federation was formed. The American and Western companies wanted to make Zimbabwe the headquarters of vehicle manufacturing. Takakura tichinzi paane motor vainzi Ford Motor Company. This is where we were aspiring to be, those huge factories. Unfortunately, our national politics went wrong. Federation collapsed. UDI came with Smith defying the world. We were forced into a war by Ian Smith. President Samora Machel had to close the border in 1976 because we were now in a war. We became independent. The Western countries still did not want Mozambique and Zimbabwe to thrive together. They sabotaged all the railway communications through Mozambique, and we were forced to go to South Africa. Along the process, the whole car manufacturing industry moved to South Africa. Zimbabwe was left with shells of factories. Now, with this advent of the paradigm shift from fossil fuels to new energy electric vehicles, we have another striking chance at becoming a major center of global auto vehicle production. You go back to what I started off with earlier on. There is purpose in why I started with what's happening in the mineral sector. We can see the opportunity where Zimbabwe is. In car racing, it means overtaking at the bend in car racing. We may just have a striking chance of overtaking at the bend and become the new center of new energy electrical mobility. After all, we already have a steel plant still being produced by the top private sector company in the world in terms of technology. By the way, China has surpassed everybody else, not only in the production of steel, but in the technology for the production of steel. The Japanese used to be kings. Now they are beginning to pay respects to the science of the research and development which China has done in steel. The Japanese. Nippon Steel now says the Chinese are a force. So when we have Manise and we have Chinese steel technology, we are having the best possible steel products being made in Zimbabwe by Zimbabweans for the global market. You combine the steel, you combine the new energy electric vehicles, which I alluded to earlier on, you see the possibilities. And this is what our president was looking at when he visited China. So it was beyond a nostalgic visit about his past as a young revolutionary scouring the globe looking for support. He's looking for the promise of the future. And for another decade in Zimbabwe to have a leadership which spans so many decades of our struggle, of which the culmination of which is the quest for prosperity. Because that's what this whole struggle was about. Can Zimbabwe be given a chance to become prosperous? The president is hitting all the right chords on this particular instance. So this is good. There was also an SME, the Chinese, they have a template which has proven that it works. When you can move people out of poverty, 500, 600 million people out of poverty in 3 decades, it's not something which you should look down at. Nobody has done it in the history of humanity. So they have a template for Africa with 1.2 billion people to say it can be done. And the president wants Zimbabwe to be at the forefront of that capacity by Africa to deliver its people to modernization. That's why it's called Vision 2030. President Varukuzia Kwarukwenda. And this visit encapsulates all these aspects of the president as a national leader, as a global statesman. This is good, this visit which we had. On Sunday, you heard the news, we will be having Mutsvangwa Day in Masvingo. This is an event which will be headlined by our president. The delivery which I have made to date, they focused on prosperity for Zimbabwe. I made earlier on a reference to the glorious days of the Mutsvangwa kingdom, the great citadel of the Mutsvangwa king, of the Shona kings, the great Zimbabwe civilization. This is a reminder of the history which Zimbabwe has come. Earlier on, I told you of the history of the party. There is another aspect of the history of the party which I had left, which is the Soviet dimension, where, because we gave the world 2 liberation movements, the other wing of Zanu PF took advantage of the Russian people's march to progress, particularly the decision by Russia in 1917 after the Bolshevik Revolution to make modern arms available to other countries other than Europe. I always remind that the most important clause of the Berlin Conference was the cartelization of arms against other continents by Europe, modern arms. Zvikanzi tachiwana chinopfura uri kure, vamwe vane mapfumo nemiseve, hapana anofanira kunge achizochiwana chombo ichochi. And one of the consequences of that decision at the 1884 Berlin Conference was the banning of Portugal from supplying arms to the African people, and the West affected with the people of Zimbabwe. Suddenly, the Shona kingdoms, which had been powerful for all these years, had no source of modern armaments. That's why ana Mashaya Mombe wakarohwa. That's why ana Lobengura wakarohwa. That's why ana Chingaira wakarohwa. Because they could not get new weapons, although they had the gold to buy the weapons. Remember, they had the ability to buy the weapons because they had gold. But they were shut out of the European market of armaments. So Russia, after the Bolshevik Revolution, says, no, these weapons for the progress, for the sake of human progress, let them be made available. And the Chinese were the first to benefit. Then later on, Vietnam and everybody. And we also later benefited. So we squared the issue of military asymmetry between Europe and Africa. This is the history of Zimbabwe. And the president took us on that chapter. But I also wanted to mention the contribution of the Russians in this vein because they are part of Zimbabwe's history. But we also, this is at the party level, at national level. But there's also this other aspect at national level where we go a long way back. For 800 years, Zimbabwe delivered Africa's most enduring and sustained civilization, which is the Great Zimbabwe Civilization. And for testament, you just need to go to those places which I mentioned earlier on. As no doubt, all other African nations, civilizations, they build with straw, they build with pole, they build with dagger. Now, those are very, very prone to the vagaries of the weather, those three building elements. What the Zimbabweans do to show that they want to be permanently remembered, they went into the mountains and took granite, which came from the geological upheavals of the past and which has endured forever. They started burning it, pouring water and chiseling it, and making these citadels without cement. Because if cement had also been used, it probably would have collapsed itself. So you can imagine the engineering ingenuity which went on to make what Great Zimbabweans are. And that's why the UNESCO has made it a heritage site. So it is befitting that as our president takes this country through the paces, this nation through the paces of what we could be, we go and pay homage to this place past at Great Zimbabwe, Kumasvingo, and honor the kings who made it possible. And by the way, where's my phone? To show that this was not an isolated, because we didn't write history, but sometimes other people wrote it for us. I've got a picture here. This is a picture from 16-something. This is a picture of King, can you read for me? My eyes are not so good.
Nyatsimba Mutota, King of Mutapa.
King Nyatsimba Mutota, King of the Mutapa. And do you know who commissioned this coin at that time? None other than the King of Portugal at that time. Why? Because they had come looking for gold. Like everybody else had been done in the past. You come to Zimbabwe looking for gold. Ma India wanted to Kushona land. Gold land, that's what Mashona. Ma Somali, they are here, they were here. Ndo wakapazare kuti Sofala, Kubaira, Somalis. Remember, this was all part of the Shona Great Zimbabwe Civilization. I mean, Great Mutapa Kingdom. The Iranians, if you go, what is this city on the Rovuma River? I'll tell you the name very soon. It's still there. The Iranians were there. They were trading with Zimbabwe. Zanzibar, the Arabs, they were trading with Zimbabwe. Indonesians they came all the way trading in Zimbabwe. The Indians, I've told you, the Chinese were all here. Even the Turkish, they were all here. Egypt, they were all here trading in Zimbabwe. So this is our history, the history of a civilization which could be sustained for such a long time. And having this coin made in there was even a coat of arms designed by the Portuguese for the Munutapa Empire, for the Munutapa king at that particular time. We were engaged in global diplomacy because we were a trading nation. Sorry. Because we are a trading nation for a long time. So it's right and proper that our young people who are thought that history starts with the arrival of the British. It's not true. We have been around for a long, long, long time. And the president is right to take these young people down historical memory lane. You understand? Historical memory lane. So that as we aspire for the rightful place of Zimbabwe in the global affairs, we make reference to our past and get inspired. It's good to be inspired. And this is the whole purpose of the event. I want to say thank you to the president for thinking of hosting such an occasion so that as we get into the digital era, young people can understand the possibilities, the immense possibilities which this country has, which have been bolstered by our historical footprint, which UNESCO recognizes through the Great Zimbabwe as a global national heritage. So, on that good note of modernization, of going back to our history and the era of artificial intelligence, I drift to congratulate the president once again for making a major move which will change the lives of young people, which will change the lives of rural people, which will bring innovation to another level in urban areas. And what do I want to talk about? Starlink is in Zimbabwe. Starlink. You got the announcement, and it is the wisdom of the president in his cabinet, and I was there in his cabinet, when he said this must be done for the whole country, not for a particular individual corporate entity. Now he has made Starlink be available to all Zimbabweans. And his argument was very simple in cabinet. He asked it, I'm a technology buff, all of you know that. He asked it, kwa hiyo Starlink yacho masatellite zvinombonzi chi? Ndikati Starlink chef masatellites adzikiswa zvekuti apa level yekuti kana vari pasi vanogona kusenzesa mafoni avo kuwana signal from a satellite. You don't need to go 30,000 feet, 30,000 meters into the sky again. Saka chinhu chakanaka kaichi. Ndikati chef chakanaka zvachose, saka chakutoita kuti vanhu vekumaruzevha vakwanisewo kuwana internet vasingamiriri matambo ePTC yakudhara kana mabase station enet 1 kana Econet. Imvura kana zuva rinongonaya pese pese muZimbabwe. Zvikanzi saka kana zvakadaro, I am the one who is been elected by the Zimbabwe people on their behalf. It is me who is going to license this technology. There was a lot of gnashing of teeth when the president announced himself this license. But by the way, that was also what Elon Musk wanted. He had been approached by several business people to try to cut a deal for their corporates. He rejected that path. He says, I want to engage with the Zimbabwe government. Don't listen to a lot of explanations, this and that, or this or that, and a lot of ad hominem, homophobic attacks against some people, and I don't want to refer to who they are about that issue. Even family attacks about that issue. No, the family had nothing to do with it. The sons who are being made reference to had nothing to do with it. It was just attempted corporate greedy, which President smothered. And he took the decision on behalf of the Zimbabwe people. And now we have Starlink available. Look at how it is going to change this country. All this energy which the president is marshalling by his projects, which are all coming to fruition as we march to Vision 2030. They need communication. They need seamless link between the people the government and their president. Now we have an opportunity of mastering modern technology, harnessing it to make sure that there is digital inclusive. Can you imagine delivering the ability of seamless communications to a highly literate population, which is Zimbabwe? Highly literate. Yes, you know, my library, Avurika pese there will be a library. Quite my library, my book, my library, my websites. It means information can be gathered and processed at local level. It means grandiose opportunities for our young people and for our population. So thank you, President, for bringing this technology in the most appropriate of manner to the Zimbabwe people. Mavanyaradza vese vanongogwauta vachitaura zvemanga-manga rwendo runo mavarova nechematseka nzungu nenyaya yenyu yeStarlink. Congratulations, Comrade President. I thank you. This ends my presentation today.